By this point, you should have already completed draft 2 of the doubt paper. But before you're ready to turn in the final draft, it's time to evaluate the need for further revision beyond draft 2. Now at this point, I have already asked that you turn in the rough draft. We've participated in the peer reviews, and you should have gotten some formal evidence of feedback as well, plus your own self-assessment. Taking all these things combined, along with your checklist, these should have given you a series of things to look for and to revise for between drafts 1 and draft 2. However, before it's time for you to be ready to proofread, edit, and finalize your paper, it is necessary for you to evaluate the need for further revision. Now, I've pulled up a paper from a former student from a recent semester, and I do have his permission to do so. What you see on the screen right now is his very first draft, which is the doubt rough draft. Now, we're not going to read it, but I do want to take an opportunity to scroll through a few things just to show you a couple of things. All right, so this is his first draft, and as you know, the first draft or even the final draft has a minimum page requirement of 4 pages. So I'll just scroll through and show that basically this student met the minimum page requirement for the first draft, and his first paper was not much longer than what the minimum required. And notice that he does not yet have the works cited page. This is a primary source paper. It's not a research paper. However, we are using a single source, and so I will ask that you have as your last page a work cited page. It will only have a single entry because we're only using the doubt paper. Okay, so this student had a pretty effective first draft for the doubt paper. He participated in the peer reviews. He got formal evidence of feedback, and he self-assessed using the checklist and just his own critical thinking skills. Now, the next file I'm going to bring up his second draft, his revised draft. So let's take a look at this one. And I'll go over here to the Review tab and click on All Markup so that we can see the level of change between Draft 1 and Draft 2. Now, you have not yet necessarily gotten to this point yet where you're evaluating your second draft. Let's take a look at this one. So this is his second draft, and look at the level of change between Draft 1 and Draft 2. And keep in mind that his first draft was good. And I did happen to have an opportunity to talk to this student a few minutes before class one day, and I was telling him that I thought his rough draft was very effective, and he looked at me and he said, really? He said, I wasn't really satisfied with it, and he said, I saw much opportunity for revision, and he certainly did. So as we scroll through here, notice that he has pretty much entirely gutted, almost entirely rewritten his entire rough draft. Now, this isn't always necessary, but sometimes when you're making revisions between drafts, it's not that what you have is bad, it's just that what you have may not be easily fixed by just adding in a line or two, rearranging something. Sometimes in order to fix something, you actually have to go back and craft it. Now, it's not always this extensive, but in this particular case, this student did some pretty extensive rewriting to an already effective draft. Now, if we recall from his first draft, it was just barely over 4 pages, which is the minimum length. So if we were to scroll a little bit further, through the paper, we see that we're on page 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Now, notice here, this is a little bit misleading. So this student does not really have, 14 pages. Notice that the lines are crossed out here. And so that indicates these things were taken out from draft 1. If we really want to see how long draft 2 is, I will toggle to the no markup, and we'll see that this student's paper is about not quite 10 pages in length, almost 10 pages in length. So draft 1 was about 4 pages and just a little bit over. Draft 2, the clean copy, which I've toggled the view to show you, is about 10 pages. So at this point, though, at draft 2, what happens is that many students, they will just take the draft 2, they might proofread and edit that, and then go ahead and turn it in. But what you really need to do is you need to evaluate and ask yourself, is draft 2 as good as it gets? Is this what I want to be my final draft? And so this student asked himself that question, and he decided that he had further revisions to do. So let's toggle to, this is his final draft, and let's scroll through here and just kind of see how long the paper is. And it's not about length, but it's about the level of revision. So I'm just going to kind of scroll quickly through here just so we can see how long the final draft was and the level of revision that this student went through. So remember that the first draft was a little over 4 pages. The second draft was 9 to 10 pages. And the final draft, this is a clean copy of the final draft, is not quite 14 pages. Now, this isn't to say that I expect your paper to be 14 pages. To be honest, this is far longer than what the average student would produce. But the bottom line is that anytime I give you an assignment, the minimum page requirement that's listed on the assignment sheet is just that. It is the minimum number of pages that is acceptable to me. It is the minimum number of pages that I believe that you can generate a reasonably good paper in that amount of space. So it's perfectly all right if you have a 4-page paper, a 5 or 6-page paper. Generally, most students to get into the A or B ranges, will exceed the page minimum. But you certainly don't have to go to this length. Now, I will say also that longer is not necessarily better. Now, in this case, it turned out to be true. This paper turned out to be exceedingly well, and this is quite possibly one of the best papers that I've ever seen on this particular topic. Keep in mind, though, that you don't have to produce 14 pages. You're only obligated to produce 4. But if you're really aiming for the A or the B, chances are, you'll at least hit 6, 7, maybe 8 pages, because you're going into a greater level of detail. You're developing your argument more fully, and those are the characteristics and the hallmarks of an A paper. So before you get ready to finalize your paper, before you get ready to proofread and edit, you need to look at your second draft. You need to read through it carefully. You need to ask yourself, how confident do you feel in the argument and the execution? Do you have any questions? And can you answer those questions on your own? If you can self-assess and you can identify areas in your paper that need improvement, and you know what you need to do in order to do that, then that's fine. Then you have all the tools and all the things that you need in order to make that happen. But to the extent that you have any question, to the extent that you have any doubt, to the extent that you need any further help, then you need to determine what you're going to do and whom you're going to ask for that help. Are you going to submit your paper to Smart Thinking or Upswing again? Are you going to submit your paper or go to the CLE if you happen to live locally? Are you going to reach out to me to ask for further guidance? But the bottom line is that you should not proofread or edit your paper until you've done everything in your power to make sure that your paper is executed as effectively as it can be. Okay, that concludes the video for evaluating the need for further revision beyond Draft 2.